Yeah, and also, right, so Paul told me twice. He told me first time he asked me not to swear. Then he sent me an email asking me not to swear. Kerry Ann saw me in the street, told me not to swear. And then she sent me a text message saying don't swear. I will do my best, alright? I'm no angel. Okay, any ex-cops in the place? Anyone else been in the job?
You can make up what you like now.
Lie. I was going to say something else then, but I said lie. Alright, who doesn't like cops? Sometimes. Who doesn't like cops sometimes? Ever thought about the fact that you generally only ever see a cop on the worst day of your life? Ever let that sink in? Think about it. Right? Cops don't come around for cover. You call them when everything else is done. When you're at your worst moments, when you need help that you've never needed before, who do you call? So, as a copper, you do that 2 to 5 times a day. What sort of person can that make you? Which one? Make you aggro?
Cynical?
Yep. Arrogant? Jaded?
Actions on the road.
Yep. There's accidents on the road, you're right, brother. They're fun. That's right.
It can skew your understanding.
Absolutely skew your vision of society. And I had that. I talk about, you ever met cops and they're just arrogant? Do you know why they're arrogant? Why are cops arrogant?
Other people being arrogant.
They know what really goes on.
You have to be.
Yeah.
Don't you? If I come up to your worst day of your life and you need something sorted and you can't handle it, can I second guess myself at that moment?
No.
It's weird, isn't it? Later on, you go to courts or the media gets it and everyone can have an opinion on things you should have done differently. But at that moment, you have 20 seconds to figure out what you've got to do. And it has to be right. So you are arrogant. It took me bear in mind too, fellas, I resigned in early 2002. So it's been a while, alright? I can sit there this week and think, what to do? But anyway, I always found that a very interesting part of being in the job is the fact that people say, oh, you're so arrogant. And I figured out why. It's because you have to be. You've got to be right all the time. And coming out of that sort of world has been interesting to see the fact that that's not how it really is. And coming out into and when you leave the job too, they talk about the fact you never make it on the outside. It's not like you went to prison. But it is, dude. When I left really suddenly, and I'll tell you why later on. But it was really weird. I had guys ring up and say, you never make it. You never make it on the outside. Because another part of things, consider this. You talked about gangs, you talked about belonging, you talked about that. Mate, the cops are a big bikie gang. Don't think they're not. You all wear the same colours. You all look after each other. You all back each other flat out. And why? Because other people don't. Okay, so a lot of people, you are the enemy. Okay, look, chicks love doing the whole, oh, if you misbehave, that policeman will come and get you. Well, that's handy. When you're looking for him later on, they go, I can't find my kid. He's hiding in the tree going, oh, that bloke get me. So all this is, it's a very interesting thing. Now, I was strangely enough the youngest copper in Australia at one point in time. And I'll tell you something funny. I never wanted to be a copper. No interest in being a copper. Now I get these people that we used to get them in the academy, but I've never wanted to do anything else. I finished year 12 in November. I was a Tassie copper, by the way. I was in Queensland, which is, I don't know why I can't handle a cold now, but anyway, there you go. I was in November. I was sitting at a friend of mine's place, giving her parents a hard time, which I loved to do then, and I still enjoy doing now. And her dad said, what are you going to do, Ryan? What are you doing with your life, mate? You left school, what are you going to do? I said, don't know. And I didn't have no idea. And it turns out, what he said to me, he said, why don't you join the cops? You'd be really good. And we all had a really good laugh, because I'd been done for shoplifting, I'd been done for fighting and lighting fires and bins. That was my three at that point in time. And it turns out that Bob Fielding was the superintendent of police, and he was the guy that's saying you should go for it. And he became one of my referees, which I imagine helped a little bit. I don't know, but life's who you know, so probably it did. But I did all the tests, I did all the physicals, I did all the interviews and all sorts of stuff. The interview was really funny. There were 7 of us doing the interview from what I recall, and I was last, great, handy. So we all sat in the waiting room together, and we all got shuffled in. And the interview panel was 4 superintendents and a psychologist. Anyway, one guy was there, he was 21, he talked it up about how well he'd done at school and how he knew so much about the world and all these bits and pieces there, and he came out crying. And I looked at him and they said I need to get more life experience. And I'm thinking, great, I'm 18. But I rocked in, I got an absolute flogging off them, because that's what they do. One of the primary things they do in that interview is find out how you take pressure. Because court is no fun, right? It's meant to be as intimidating as it is. Right? Because that's the whole idea behind it, not when you want to go. Anyway, I got in there, they flogged the hell out of me, and I left thinking, well, that was not fun. I did not enjoy that. And I was the last one. One of the supers worked out behind me and said, mate, you get your bronze medallion in your first aid, we'll see you in April. So I joined. I hope this is interesting, by the way. Okay, anywho. So, April rocks up. I had gone through school the big dog. I was a big guy, I was loud, like I am now still. I did everything, was good at sport and all this sort of stuff there. I rocked into the academy and I was the smallest dog there. Because I didn't know anything. I had another guy who was 19, he'd been to uni for a year. The next one up was 22, he'd been an apprentice, and then I went up and the 40-year-old was our oldest guy. So I'm 18, he's 40. And I had never clue. And I learned so quickly. And you've got to bear in mind, okay, everyone in that group is picked for their confidence, their ability to handle conflict, and sometimes that can become, as you said, being not violent as such, but aggressive certainly, and all sorts of stuff there. And man, I struggled, I didn't know what to do. I got a couple of good guys, one of them was a 22-year-old Kingy, and he took me aside and just gave me a few life tips on how not to get angry and not to get wound up and not to take it personally and change a lot of stuff, so that was great. Anyway, went through the academy. We had a thing called outstations. Now, Paul and I have discussed how many things I've done the podcast, I did a podcast with Kerry Ann, which was about death. I have lots of experience with death. Lots more than I wanted to have. Lost my parents pretty young, other bits and pieces as well, but I was on outstations and we got a call to a sudden death. No one realises that most deaths are attended by police and whatever it is, most of the time you go along, unless it's a very natural and expected death and all that sort of stuff, you've got to look along. Anyway, I was on outstations and I can't use any of those words, my fairly average first class constable who was with me, he said, you ever seen a dead body? I said, nah. He said, well, you're about to, champ, and it's all yours. Awesome. So this was weird. I rocked into this house, this fairly average suburban looking house, lots of cars out the front because the family were all there, and they were all we walked through the lounge room area, and they were all crying and grieving, because this is their beloved grandfather. Okay, this beautiful man that had been a big part of their life. Sadly, this beautiful man that had been a big part of their life had died in the toilet, and which so many people do, and those old bloody doors that, you see now they've got a big gap at the top of the doors, and that's so you can lift the door up and get in. These didn't have these. And the poor old bugger had some sort of, episode, fallen forward into the door in this little tiny cubicle, and was basically covered with his own blood and faeces, and was hard as a rock. Anyone ever seen rigor mortis? It's freaking nuts. Right, they are just rock solid. So anyhow, while this family, this lovely family, were grieving a couple of metres away, I'm kicking the door to try and get in to get this guy. Now, I think I just turned 19 at that point in time, but man, I'm sitting there going, this is weird. This is not, anyway, I got in, I basically had to wrestle this guy. At one stage I had him on my shoulder, because he's like this, on my shoulder, I'm covered with everything as well. Finally got him out the door. We couldn't get him in the body bag, because they're not designed for guys that are like that. Anyway, we got him out there, and that was one of my most confronting things ever. It wasn't the death as such, which I've never dealt that well with. I keep thinking people are going to wake up, which is unpleasant. But just how messy and how not like in the movies it all is. And that was my first time ever, and I remember sitting there thinking, and they were all making a joke about it, come on, they'd done it heaps of times before. And I hadn't, and I sat there and it really troubled me for a long time. I didn't know what to do with that, and it sort of sticks with me a little bit. But that's just learning a part of life that so many other people never encounter. because we in our society, even notice how we shy away from death? We don't talk about it. It's like, it's very segmented. We don't have the corpse in the room anymore and give it, its due and all that sort of stuff. You put it away and move on. That was an interesting part of my life in that one. Some of the other stuff, and as I said, ask me questions you want to, fellas, it's fine. With violence, because Paul was talking about it earlier, okay? Obviously, as I said, as a cop, you see everything. You see everyone on their worst day, all that sort of stuff, as I said before. I loved it. I loved the crims. I loved the violence. I loved the fights. I loved the driving fast. I loved all those bits and pieces. I had someone on the table over there earlier say, did you leave? Did it just get to you? Well, it did, but it wasn't any of that stuff. Like, I lived for that. That was fantastic. So, man, I'm going to watch UFC tomorrow, I hope, and watch two blokes get in the ring and punch the bejesus out of each other and sort of go from there. And I'm willing to pay a fee to do that. So I don't know what it says about me, but it's an interesting thing, and that brings on to another little story. I have foster parents, and my foster parents called me scared one day. They were really frightened. And I was in drug school, so I did 9 months at the academy, did 18 months at Launceston in uniform, did some country work, which is like watching paint dry. Then I went to Hobart, then I went to drug squad for 2 years, did some CIB and did a little bit of traffic just before I left. So I've never done the forensic stuff, I just like all the action stuff, so I sort of like doing that. So that's sort of my background on that. Anyway, I was in drug squad, and I looked similar to this, I think, from what I recall. And my dad said, we're really frightened, we need your help. I said, yeah, of course, what do you need? Turns out my brother was smoking dope, and he had racked up a bit on tick. Everyone know what tick is? Like, he racked up a debt with a drug dealer, and the drug dealer would come to my parents' place to say, you're paying, and you're paying interest, and I want it today. And they hadn't told me any of this, because I don't know why, but anyway. And they said, this is what's happened, I think it's best we just pay him. And I said, oh no, we're not paying this dude at all. So I got in the car, I chucked my old man in the car, I said, go on, where's he live? I said, right, I took him out there to rain. Went in there, knocked on the front door, and my old man's standing next to me here. Anyway, this guy rocks up to the door, and I just quietly mentioned to him the fact that if he didn't back off, forget the debt, leave everyone, he would go down, but more importantly, everyone around him would go down first, so that I could tell all of them that he'd ratted on them, and then he would be public enemy number one. And it was interesting, because my old man's an engineer, he's never had a fight in his life. I'd have 5 and 9. So, and he came away from that and he got back in the car and he said, violence is a way of life to you, isn't it? I said, no. I said, I just understand it. I just get where it comes from. And to see a man that just had no violence in his life whatsoever encounter just a conversation, like no one threw any fists, nothing really happened. But for him to see that and be so shocked and horrified by it, blew my mind a bit. I thought, once again, I was thinking about how jaded, someone said jaded over here, how jaded I must have been, what sort of a person I was, and you question yourself and you do all those bits and pieces on that. I had a very confronting situation in myself regarding that at one point in time, where I was in a domestic violence incident, which is, dime a dozen. To be honest, Christmas Day is a shocker. All you do is go from DV to DV all day. Anyway, we're sitting there and we rocked up to this event or call or whatever it was there. She's covered in claret, she's copped a fair hiding. He subsequently got a fair hiding off us because he decided he should fight us. Never a good idea, don't fight cops. Right, they've always got backup. Radios are fast. And anyway, we're sitting here, we got him in the divvy van, slammed him in there, he's in there, we're dealing with his missus who's sitting there bawling her eyes out trying to find somewhere to stay. And I was eating a sandwich. And I remember sitting there next to this poor woman whose life had just evaporated in front of her, she's got to find a place for her kids, hubby's gone to jail, she's going to have to go to court, all these things are going to happen, she's bleeding everywhere. And I was eating a sandwich. And I started thinking, I think you're missing the point, brother. I think you might have come to your part where you don't understand anything. So I started doing some stuff with drug, talking to kids about not using drugs and all those bits and pieces, trying to redeem myself a little bit and all those sort of bits and pieces on that. But just everything nuts. But the thing is with it all is that it's a different world, and everyone sits there and then sort of questions cops and questions opinions, and everyone's a do-gooder. You know, everyone says, "Oh, why do you do this?" Like, ever heard the thing about, when someone's shot? Okay, and I've never shot anyone. I have my gun on with you, but I've never shot anyone. Everyone ever, that thing when people say, "Why didn't you shoot him in the leg?" Anyone ever heard that? Any shooters out there? Firstly, it's freaking hard to nail someone in the leg when things are going pear-shaped all of a sudden. And the other part is, you know why they don't do that? Because if you've decided that time has come to put a bullet in someone, you've got to decide that they're worth killing. So you don't do their leg. You stop. You don't, and one of the things they used to say in our training is, we're not telling you to shoot to kill, we're telling you to shoot to stop. If you want to shoot to stop, it's your body mass. Middle. That's where you want to hit. And all the people, there's so many people out there going, "Oh, it's not fair, it's not reasonable, you shouldn't do that," but they're not there. It's one of those things again where that moment in time that you're sitting there and you have to make that one decision as to whether this person lives or dies. And I had two coppers, I think it was two that I knew and was friends with and whatever, that did shoot people and kill them, and both of them left the job shortly afterwards because they couldn't handle it anymore, and they are badly affected. They're not well puppies at all, and they're still to this day, because no one actually goes out there wanting to take a life. I don't know how war veterans did it. I think about these people that say, they've got PTSD and all that sort of stuff. Well, the song must have been fun. So, that's a part of that, I guess. But one of the things I tried to gauge a lot in my policing later on, early on, I could have been a better cop. Just so you know, I was young, I was having a great time. Chicks did uniforms, they give you fast cars, you get to fight all the time, it's excellent. It's just fun. But later on, as you get a bit older and you figure stuff out, you start thinking, okay, what's it about? Is it worth just locking everyone up? Is it worth just doing things? And of course it's not. And you grow up, and I was very fortunate to grow up a cop. Because, as I said, the cops taught me how to drive. I had my P's for 2 months before I hit the academy, so I didn't know anything. So they put me out on a skid pan, they taught me how to defensive driving and all those bits and pieces there, so that was fantastic. They taught me how to talk to people, they taught me, how to... it's funny, I really, honestly don't panic. I don't know what it is, things just happen, and I don't panic, I'm cool and I'm calm, and I think it's just from years of having that sort of, being in those situations, being where it's all going down, that you sort of just go, right, what's going on here? And you figure it out. That's one of the things I loved about it too. I loved being where it was all happening. If you go home and watch the news in the evening, you go, yeah. But the funny part was, it was hardly ever like you saw it. So don't believe everything you see on the media, it's not true. So, one of the things I really started working on though, and we were talking about a little bit over here at the table, the fellas over here, was, what am I going to call it? I can't call it that. It's a meter, attitude meter, okay? With an attitude meter. It was so funny, you get these people and you pull them over or you go to talk to them and they're like, "Oh, look, sorry mate, my apologies, I did this, I did that, I wasn't too sure." I normally say, "Hey, right, don't worry, it's all good, did it?" Those ones that get out of the car and light up on me, man, first you're just going to get it for speeding. Now you're getting a whole bucket. So don't do that, there's a tip for future players. Now, honest word here. So, Paul asked me, I think I'm an atheist, I don't know, I was, and now I think I'm a deist. Anyone know what that is? Deist? When you just believe in deity, I'm not sure, I don't know what's going on at the moment, to be honest. But, Paul asked me, first he asked me to speak, and then he put out a flyer to all you blokes and said, "Ryan's going to discuss his relationship with God."
Not quite so.
Well, something like that. Anyway, and I sent a text message to Paul and said, "What are you talking about? I don't have one." And he said, "Well, say that." I said, "Right, I will." So I will, to a degree. I was brought up Catholic, went to Catholic boarding school, lived with priests and brothers and all those sort of bits and pieces. And it was alright, that was all fine. I don't know, can I make a really ordinary joke? Like, I must have been the ugly kid if you get my drift. Nothing ever happened to me. So there you go. But it was interesting. I never really believed it. I never really got it. I didn't understand why people would go to church. I don't understand why people would give their life to the church and do these things that Paul did. As far as the cops go, it really disappointed me. It was an interesting thing that so many people that were good, Lord, God-abiding, church-going people were not good people, and were seriously not good people. The amount of times I would go into horrible domestic violence situations where the first thing you saw as you walked in the entrance was a beautiful picture of God or a crucifix, a picture of Jesus or a crucifix. That blew my mind. Seeing the brothers and the priests that had dedicated their lives to doing this behave fairly poorly from time to time growing up made me think, well, can you just do this? Can you behave any way you want and then just get forgiven? Is that okay? And I truly think that some people feel like that. I think that some people think that, oh, you know, I'm a church goer, I'm good, and so I can behave any way I want. And for me, that's disgusting. Like, first and foremost, if you want to say that you're that person and you're doing these things, then you should light up and you should be the leader. You should be the one that shows others how to behave, not ask for forgiveness later on. As far as the cops go, well, hang on, first one, it was when I was, what would I have been, 23, I reckon, something like that. Now, my foster parents ran Bible studies out of their front room. So they were churchgoers, they were very, you know, into Christ, nice and stuff and that sort of thing. And I rang my mum and said, I don't believe anymore. And she went, oh, okay, right, weird phone call, but anyway. And then my foster dad, who was, as I said before, although not a violent man, very intelligent, very cluey, he said to me, he rang me up 5 minutes later and said, your mother tells you don't believe in God anymore. I said, no. He said, what are you, an idiot? And that was sort of that. And I said, no, I'm not. We went through that. And he's funny now, he's changed his point of view as well. But I think, as far as a connection with the police goes, I don't get it. I don't get if they're, and you guys are all come to a church gig, I'm here because I got asked to be, but I'd love to hear your thoughts. Like all the violence that I saw, all the disconnect I saw, like Paul said, I run Tribe now. Tribe is a community we put together so as to give people connection, give people opportunity to rejoin their community if they've been lonely or isolated or found a bad time or whatever that. Why do I have to do that? Why isn't everyone doing it? Who doesn't know their neighbour's name? Who doesn't talk to who doesn't talk to people in the street? Who makes a bad review at a restaurant because the waitress was a little bit late? Or, you know, their cup of tea was a little bit cold. I mean, I see these people all the time doing this sort of stuff. And it's not the big stuff. Like, there's evil in the world. There's bad guys in the world. I've been to murders, I've been to terrible rapes, I've been to all sorts of stuff. There are bad people in the world, but the person who's sitting there really giving a waitress a hard time, they don't think they're a bad person, but they paid their $5 for their cup of coffee and they've got the right. No, you don't. You're a jerk. And what gets me is that these people are quite often, I'm not just blaming churchgoers over, but you know, I don't have a real connection with God. I guess that's the answer to it in the end. But what gets me is the fact that people seem to rest on their laurels about the fact that, oh, well, I gave $20 to the collection plates and therefore I'm a good bloke. You're not. Like, I laugh and joke all the time with people that say, oh, you know, when they try and, because people try and recruit me into religion, that's great, I just really enjoy that. But they come in and they say, oh, you know, and I said, mate, if I get to the pearly gates and St Peter says, mate, you're a great bloke, you did heaps of good stuff, you saved heaps of souls, but you didn't go to church. Sorry, you're out, I'll take that. I'll go where everyone else is and do that, whatever it is. But I find it interesting that, and I hope, I guess, that you guys and the people in your congregation sort of start thinking about the fact that being a good person or being a good Christian or whatever it might be from someone who's probably not, is an everyday thing. It's not a weekend thing, it's not a part-time job. Okay, I do bad stuff. Okay, I still get angry at myself and misbehave and I like beer too much and all that sort of thing, but I try as hard as I can to create an atmosphere where the people around me are enhanced by my presence, not detracted. I can't understand the way that people treat other people in everyday life. So, for me, I guess, and I want question time too, but my relationship with God, I don't have one. Maybe I do in the fact that and I talked to Paul about this once before, I want to be the best man I can be. I don't expect to have a reward. I don't think I'm going to heaven. I don't think that exists, and all those other bits and pieces. So for me, it's just the way you should behave. And if anything, I can talk about the cop. I've got more stories galore if you want them. But in the end of the day, if we all supported our fellow man or woman or whatever it might be there, the cops would be reasonably unnecessary. But they're not, because of who we are as a community and who we are as people. So I guess, look, happy for question time. I think I'll probably leave it there if you're happy with that, Pedro. But look, do that, fellas. I hope you found it a little bit interesting and whatever. If you've got any questions or you want to talk it, don't talk to me about what the laws are, because I'm 20 years out. Give me a break on it. But look, I hope you enjoyed it. I want to thank Padre Paul. Thank you. Since you're not there. Thanks, brother. It's always funny when you do these sort of things, because he knows that he's got no idea what I'm going to say when I get up here. I dig that so much. It's that moment of, oh, here we go. So going with that. But thanks heaps, man. I really appreciate what you got.
Just curious as to some of the experiences you shared there, and you spoke about how close, I guess, I'd articulate that, how close you came to the malevolence of the soul in some very drastic situations. Yet somehow you were able to navigate that and not be drawn onto, let's say, a crooked or corrupt path.
Yeah.
Why do you think you were able to do that, and did you see people around you not be able to do that as successfully as you?
Thanks, mate. What's your name?
Luke.
Thanks, Luke. The best coppers you'll ever find are 49% crim.
Yeah.
And consider that for a second, okay? Best coppers you'll ever find are 49% crim. Because you got to know their soul. I mean, you got to sort of figure out where they're at on. Because a lot of them, it's a job. Like I had a wonderful experience, and I'll get to your thing there, but like, I think I was 20, and I was guarding a good crim. Because CIB said, right, hey, Sunshine, you look after him for a while and we'll go get ready for the video interview. So I was guarding this crim, and it's just a job for them. There's no really good ones, there's no malevolence, they don't hate cops, and it's all part of the game, you know, sort of. And he said to me, he said, hey, young fellas, yeah, mate. He said, you got a big dog? I said, yes, I've got a big dog. He said, good. He said, always have a big dog. I said, how come? And he said, well, if I'm going to rob your house, and I rock up to your house and you've got a big dog, and I look next door and they haven't got a big dog, I'm going to rob their house. And I said, thanks, mate. How weird is that? I thought, wow, that was bizarre. I saw guys accidentally going down bad paths. Have I done bad stuff in the cops? Yep. I gave out some floggings I shouldn't have given. Well, should I? Well, no, because I'm not the judge, jury and executioner. But sometimes if someone punches you in the head, you can go back a little harder than you should have. And I don't know if I regret doing it, but I look at it and think, oh, that could have been better. I've never been really interested in wealth, particularly. I'm not really that guy. Probably why I'm always poor. But anyway, so I never did much of that. We had one guy that thinks something went very poorly. And a guy, David Ling, his name was. He used to be nicknamed Slug, which was the life. But anyway, and he was one of the best drug squad officers you'll ever see. And why? Because he was 49% crim. He might have been 49.5% crim. Like, he was pretty close. But geez, he was good. Like, he knew all the gigs, like informants. He knew where everything was going down. He knew who was connected to who, and he did some really big busts. Sadly, he was a bit of a dog as well. And he started having relations with one of his female informants, which is not a good idea. He was married with 3 kids at the time. So he started, one thing too, back in the day, quite often in drug squad, if you did a search and you wanted to cultivate an informant, well, you'd leave them a bit. If you sit there, you towel up their £1.5 of gear, or whatever it was there, and if you walked out there and said, hey mate, pop plant out the back, just have a look under it. And you go there and there's 2 buds in there. First thing they do is you walk it out, they'll be banging on that bomb as soon as possible because they've had a bad day. And then they go, oh, wasn't he a good bloke? And you start running with that. And that used to be pretty common, that you do that sort of stuff. Anyway, Lemmy was having relations with this woman he shouldn't have had with. She fell in love with him. He said, whoa, I've got a family and kids. Long long story short, she ended up basically informing on everything the drug squad had done, including that sort of stuff, which if you think about it is a form of trafficking. So that was not, she burnt his house down. And it was very poorly. And watching, and sadly, I was in drug squad as well, but I'd never worked with Lingy, he'd left before. This was 2 or 3 years beforehand this all happened. And the commissioner came in, deputy commissioner came in and sacked us all at the drug squad straight away. Said, you're all gone, you've got a corrupt area, you know, you can't, we don't trust any of you. And that hurt, man. I'd never done anything. Like, apart from what I told you, I'd never done anything. I'd never done anything that was dishonest. That's sort of the best thing I can tell you on that. But the temptation, it's easy. I mean, and it's there, and if you can't, like if somebody, I've had guys offer me a few grand to just let them go and do this and do that. And, mate, if you're sitting there, I mean, my best, this is 20 years ago, so my best year in the cops, qualified for sergeant, detective, doing night shifts, doing a lot was $49,500. So it's not a big pay. So to get that was interesting. But look, honestly, I can tell you something right now, I never did anything like that. I mean, look, I've been to burglaries where the survey got done and there's Snickers bars thrown on the store and you're sitting there for an hour and a half waiting for the key holder, so you might have Snickers. But, you know, I mean, apart from that, yeah, not really. But it was one part too. Tassie's got everything. As I said, I was Tassie copper, but Tassie's got everything that the mainland has got. We don't quite have the money as far as your big drug officer. But we also didn't have that culture. Like a lot of Queensland, Victoria, New South Wales, they had a real deep culture of corruption, and you would get recruited early. And I've only read books about this, and I haven't had anything to do with it, but like, and it became normal to do that. And when something bad becomes normal, you got an issue. But it just never was for us. Like, we were one of the first years that came out where they had cameras in the watch room, where you go in and charge people and do all and stuff there. Because the watch room used to be a fairly violent place back in the day. But then when cameras came in and videos came in, they sort of really calmed down a little bit on that. But yeah, good question, mate. Thank you. I appreciate it. Anyone else? Jeff, this would be good from you. Go for it.
Are you sure that you're not being a bit too hard on both yourself and on God? Because part of your speech, you said yourself, there's evil people everywhere, and that's the answer. What an evil person will try to do in the drug industry is to corrupt the police that are on the drug squad. And that applies to everything. Evil people will infiltrate the church and corrupt it from within. They'll infiltrate a government department or a political party, whatever it is, they will infiltrate it and corrupt it from within.
Got a question for you, all you blokes. Is it easier to be a good man or a bad man? It is, really. No. As far as I can see. Like, you know, the one thing that got me in real estate, I've been 15 years in real estate after I got to the endless pursuit of more just blows my mind. How much is enough? I got out of it a couple of years ago, a few years ago, because I had a few bad things happening, but I decided enough was enough. And one of the reasons being I was working for this jerk who was worth 50 mil, whatever, something like that. And I was his agent, and he was wanting me to screw this leaseholder for like $100 a month extra. And so he made me work hard for it. And it was a game. It was just nothing. And I just said enough and gone. So, because, and that person I'm talking about is a well-known bush person around town. And everyone, oh, golf claps when he walks in the door. He's an arsehole. But anyway, there you go. So, I'll get you, man. I don't know about being hard. I'm a realist. I think with my failings and the good I can do as well, I'm more than capable of being a bad guy. I have Matt's a mate of mine, Matt Bolton over here, he's a pastor as well, and he deals with domestic violence, and I've had some very soul-searching discussions with Matt about the fact that I probably was a pretty ordinary husband in a domestic violence way a couple of times, and I regret that. As far as being hard on God, well, firstly, I don't necessarily believe, so it's hard to say I'm being hard on God. I think I'm hard on religion, and I think I'm hard on religion because it is capable of doing so much good, yet it can do so much evil and so much bad, and that kills me. in the fact that it could be such a wonderful thing. Even whether or not you believe in what it is. I mean, like Paul said, like tribe, and Jeffrey goes to tribe a lot. Yeah, you can see that there's a community there, there's people getting support and help and all these things out of that, and that can happen. But I see in so many institutions that doesn't happen, and it becomes more about the plate that gets handed out, and it's all about the money. I mean, for me personally, the Catholic Church is a disgrace in the amount of wealth that they have, and what do they do to? I mean, I don't get that. How can you be so wealthy and then put round the plate for Mission Australia and give a few pennies? That's just disgusting. I'm sorry, I can't handle that. Anyone wants to argue with that? Go your ass. Matty?
Just love what you're doing with the tribe, Ryan. Just wondering what blokes like us could do to get behind tribe, or what can we do to help with what you're trying to do in the community?
Turn up.
Turn up, yeah.
Okay, anyone know what tribe is? Anyone heard of tribe before? Okay, tribe social belonging is something I started up a few years ago, and I'll tell you what. As I said, I was running my own commercial real estate agency, doing okay, everything's fine. I was Chamber of Commerce president at that point, and I wanted to do stuff better in my community. I can't stand stuff that doesn't work. I can't fix a car, I'm hopeless, but I can fix, I deal all right with people. Anyway, I was getting a divorce, which are always fun. We had a few of those, nice, yeah, good, they're good, excellent fun. And in the midst of all of that, my son got diagnosed with bone cancer and died. And I was at my lowest point. I couldn't see any light. I remember specifically turning around on my bed every morning, putting my feet on the ground, having a shower, getting my laptop, going to the cafe, so I just didn't sit at home and fall into a spiral of despair. That's the reason I did it. But I was sitting there at one point. Jake was still alive at this point in time. He died when he was 18, by the way. Anyway, I said, man, I've got all these people. So I would have had 20 people that could have gone to their house at 3 o'clock in the morning and asked for help. We got $35,000 raised for us on GoFundMe from people, a lot of people I didn't know. And so many people. I ended up having to, I made a Facebook group where I told everyone what was going on, and I invited all these people. I said, please don't ask me in the street, because it's very hard to talk about, like you're not having a good day. And so I can keep them up to date. But that's how, I was so cared for that people go, oh, how's Jake, how are you, how's this? And to tell that story 20 times a day is not fun. So I do that. And I started sitting there thinking, though, I've got all this support, what if you don't have any? What if you don't have anyone? What if you don't have a person you can go and talk to and do something with? If your worst day is your kid dying or you burn the toast, I don't care. Whatever your worst day is, you should have an opportunity to come and see somebody and share that time with or whatever it was. So the first tribe event ever wasn't called tribe. I said, I put on my Facebook, I said, I'll be at the Belvedere Hotel at 5:30 p.m. having a beer. If you are lonely, isolated, or you feel like you need a friend, turn up. You'll be safe. So since then, we've had over 6,000 people come along. It's a bit, not all having a beer with me, by the way. What did? But we have 10 o'clock every Friday morning, we have a coffee catch-up at Cafe Diversity. We've had 5 people there, we've had 45 people there. So it depends on, we do one on a Monday morning, a little bit at Scarborough. We have events we go to. This Wednesday night, we're going to Cactus Jack's because, lonely people are allowed to have a beer as well. Okay, and we're doing a lot of stuff with NDIS now too, with people with disabilities, because I just turned around and thought, you're an idiot, right? 40% of the people that are coming to your gigs have got disabilities. Why are you not doing something with them? So what you can do with tribe, man, turn up. Like, you might be someone's hero, lads. And can I say too, a lot of you guys are a little bit older than me, let's say. Man, I think, I know, a lot older than me. But what a wealth of life experience you have. How much knowledge do you have? I can't stand the way that we in our society disrespect our aged. Like, we throw in a home. In Japan, you're the head of the clan. And here it's like, off you go. If you want to come along and be someone's hero and have a chat to them, by all means do so. It's free. Okay? Just turn up. So thanks, Matty. If you ever want to be involved in tribe, where's the fine? Padre can tell you more about that, but go for it.
I want to say thank you to Ryan. I actually think that's probably one of the great sermons that we get.
My wife said this morning, when she said, what are you going to say? I said, no.
No, Because, I mean, that challenge for me, that is the essence of Christianity in terms of what I've heard you say is there's a difference between external compulsion, the police making you do the right thing, and internal compulsion. And you've actually shared a story of you worked out your internal compulsion. I'm not doing good because I want to go to heaven or I'm afraid of punishment. I'm actually doing good because I just know that that's who we should be. And I think that is the difference between even what I'd say, Old Testament Christianity and New Testament Christianity it was about, here's a bunch of laws, behave, and the New Testament is Christ came and said, I'm going to put my spirit in you to help you with that internal transformation. So you shouldn't need the police to keep you in order. And what you've expressed is when you've seen that in life, when you've seen the internal compulsion as opposed to the extrinsic, that's the essence for me. That's the essence for me of the gospel. And that's why I keep saying, you're one of the best examples of Christianity going around, because you've discovered it sort of without having the church to tell you. But that is, and it's exactly the same message I had at the start, is there is a monster within us and we have to tame it. And we can either let the police try and tame it, and that's going to end badly, or we can tame it ourselves. And for me, I believe God actually is there to help us in that journey, because even though I'm a minister, I still haven't tamed my beast within. It's a lifelong battle. So thank you, Ryan, and I think it's actually good for us as people in the church, most of us here in the church, to hear what do people outside the church think of us? How do they see us and how do they hear that? And suddenly we realise we've probably got more in common with one another than we think.